War. War never changes. Except when it does. Welcome, Global War. Global War is a mod that collects 30 playable factions from the base games and mods and puts them in one huge map to battle it out, each with its own unique playstyle and reasons to be in the zone. Some are obviously better than others. The mod is currently in an alpha version with the next one already in testing, so many things could change, but the amount of content here is just endless, with the only one who can stop the Global War being you. The rules are relatively simple. You battle it out across the zone, capturing territories and resource points to better equip your faction squads. Said squads spawn from bases and camps, and every time you take over an enemy base it will begin to house your own troops and direct them to attack specific territories. Of course, you can also direct your squads to attack specific points, and it is incredibly funny to just scout the entire faction to attack a single point. And in order to host 30 factions, the zone had to be expanded. A lot. Changing many of the pre-existing maps to be more suitable for the conditions of war, fortifying bases and points of interest, as well as adding many classical maps for modern mods, and some that I haven't seen before. I'm not too sure if any of them are original, but it is possible. And to top it all off is the great atmosphere of the mod, if you're not in the middle of terminating half the zone. Unfortunately, there is an issue with dark spot being too dark, sometimes obstructing visibility, but when it is sunny it looks and plays very well. The weapons pack featured in the mod is Arsenal Overhaul, the chat brother of S.T.A.L.K.E.R, having less guns but more quality for the most part, with some special weapons added on top, and the only one to feature the glorious HK470, BC's peak gun. I will not elaborate. The gunplay itself is changed as well, with different calibers behaving slightly differently. 545 and 556 will be almost the same, but 9x39 will have significantly more weight and you will feel it when you change over to it. But in the end, the mod is designed to make every single weapon viable. Well, the world is nothing without the Stalkers that inhabit it, and the AI doesn't fail. Of course, it can't match the skills of the player, but it is more than enough to make it believable, with each faction having its own way to wage war. Paramilitary factions have better equipment and training than the average Stalker or Bandit factions that utilize strength in numbers over raw skill and equipment for the most part. They will all change their approach depending on your action. If a faction suffers heavy losses, they may back down and be more passive, or they will see that you're reloading and push you at that exact moment, or even attempt to shoot you through thin sheet metal. The AI is quite dynamic, even if it's not the most difficult thing to handle. Unfortunately, mutants take a back seat in this mod, with them only spawning from layers that can be used to slow down an advancing enemy. And some factions like the Dark Stalkers coexist with the mutants, so they can use them to their advantage. Some new mutants are featured as well, such as this thing, and elemental bureaus that can shoot lightning or fire, and the most giant save the giant imaginable. The unique features that this mod includes are mostly nerd shit, like new HUD elements letting you know the progress of the location you're capturing, as well as hit markers for body shots, headshots, and when an enemy is dead, as well as a lot of customization settings, allowing you to change the number of mutant swarms coming from the layers or the speed of the war. You can also customize the faction tactics to your liking. There are also several game modes like the classic Azazel mode, where once you have a skill issue you take up another Stalker's body and continue the carnage from there. And you can resurrect as any of the factions. You can continue what you started as someone else or go against your former buddies. There is also survival, which is truly one of the game modes of all time, replacing most AI spawns with zombies, on paper. In reality, it doesn't seem to change anything. Honestly, nobody really cares about this game mode, and it won't be a free play mode without Iron Man mode, the nerve-wracking mode, where you have just one life, forcing you to take it slow as any mistake will be your final. Of course, if none of these really suit you, you can turn every faction against each other in an all-out war, or simply select one of the factions to dominate the zone, and be forced to break through from the perimeter deeper into the zone against one much stronger enemy. Since the mod doesn't really have any story, I will instead be doing a playthrough as every faction and achieve a fitting goal for each. I've also made chapters in the description so you can check out any faction that piques your interest. Keep in mind that not every faction is made the same, so some will be better than others. And for those that wish to watch it from the beginning, the Unemployed are the most common faction in the zone, with many mixed goals and a relatively short expiration date, so I decided in this playthrough I would wage my conquest following the steps of the Marked One. I began in the cordon with the clear plan to kick the army's ass and to quickly take over the bandits there. From the car park to the bridge along each camp, with the army being passive, my only worry was the Dark Stalkers that kept trying to bother my defenses. With the bandits being quite weak, I soon arrived at the doorstep of their base, and it was an easy conquest. The next step would be to rid the military of their checkpoint, so I took a squad and we went in. and with them not really trying that hard, it was relatively easy to take Cordon in under an hour. The next step would be the garbage, so I geared up and scammed my way into the hangar by literally camping behind a bus stop. This is where I had my first meetup with a boss, Sultan, who decided to take a gazillion gorillion bullets without even batting an eye, which was quite intense, but eventually he somehow fell. Unfortunately for me, a new threat emerged from the south. The Peacekeepers had decided that the best way to keep peace was violence and started pushing north. I tried to defend the cordon, but it was literally impossible to babysit this place and progress, so I chose to move on and let them take it. The next step being agroprom, which started well, but ended horribly as I ran into the boss, along with 50 Stalkers filling him with thousands of bullets without him giving a single fuck. I alone spent 600 bullets, but he just wouldn't fucking die. So I went in the files to change the resistances, which were set to 0.1 for all types of damage, and the less the number, the more the resistance. After loading my save again, he was gone, and my game crashed. Epic. From here, it was time to move to the Dark Valley, where the bandits have been reproducing using mitosis. As the second I walked in, I was sandwiched between 50 screaming drunk men. Fortunately, they were single-celled organisms and died to 2 shots max. And I took their base without much effort and soon moved on to the Black Slugs base above X18, which was a similar experience except laggier and more campy due to the layout. After taking the base, 5 army squads appeared, and while fighting them, I accidentally walked into the X18 transition. In X18 you get spawn camped by the Black Slugs, which do not seem to really have any use out of the lab as there is nothing there, so I cleared it out and walked out. Next step would be Yantar, but unfortunately nothing happened as the Ecologists had taken over the entire lab by now, even setting up a trader next to the fucking Cybrain. So instead here is me suffering fighting the Peacekeepers because I needed to take back my stash, and it was literally a 2-hour gunfight of me being backed into a corner without ammo or armor, waiting for backup, stealing guns and spraying through a wall, and they kept on spawning even on top of me. Eventually, after 105 confirmed kills, let's not talk about the unconfirmed, the Cordon and agroprom were lost, but the loners had firm control over the Middle Eastern part of the zone, and now it was time to gear up and head north. The radar was peaceful, as the main faction I walked through was neutral, and I didn't really wish to fight for the Scorcher, so I snuck my way to Pripyat, where Monolith was guarding the streets. It wasn't anything unlike other mods, but it felt really enjoyable to have a 4-way battle in the trenches of Pripyat. I soon got to the stadium, and they spotted me. A huge wave of Monolithians rushed after me, so I had to quickly get to the CMPP. And here we are, the final step. I made my way closer and closer to the gates of Chernobyl, pushing through the fanatics and exceptionally broken glass physics. With each shot, my target ever closer. Eventually, I reached the entrance, and it was time.
Вижу твое желание.
The hallways of the CMPP were suffocating, like the crashes that kept happening here. But after the zillionth attempt, the mod had mercy and let me fight my way through the fanatics, and you can imagine how that went. Eventually, I was at the final stretch of my goal, the monolith itself, and my wish.
Я вижу твое желание.
For the zone to disappear.
Чертила, бля, в натуре чертила. Смешно прям не могу.
And then he wished for the zone to disappear. And what happened next? I don't fucking know, we're still in this shithole.
Чертила, бля, в натуре чертила.
Alright, fuck you guys, I'm gonna rob some rookies. The Bandits are one of the goofiest factions, being only slightly better than the unemployed, with their only reason to exist the zone being to steal the pension from old people, 2 rubles at a time. The Bandits in this mod have some of the shittier equipment, but they make up for that with their numbers due to already mentioned mitosis. For my goals, I decided to first deal with the loners. I headed directly for their main base with a huge group of bandits to attempt to stomp them out, but they had better equipment, so I retreated because my drugs were running out. Despite that, eventually we got them surrounded and slowly grinded them out until they were finished in the cordon. With garbage and cordon firmly in our control, I put my eyes on the bigger prize. The bar. What's cooler than kicking duty ass and owning a bar? It is definitely camping a corner while hundreds of loners, duters and Freedom are flowing out brainlessly into a funnel. Freedom was already occupying the duty base by now, as he took the opportunity while duty was busy, and after a whole in-game day of kicking duty ass, I had secured the bar. And it only took an extra quick cleanup for the wild territory, and we had made sure the duty was extinct. No more sex with men in the zone. Now, with both major enemies dead, it was time to show the other gangs how it's done. My first victims would be the Black Slugs, as they were occupying our rightful Dark Valley without paying to maintain the order. Friendly or not, soon their camps fell one by one, and for some reason they kept welcoming me with open arms at every camp, despite leaving 100 of their bodies behind. Eventually I took a bite out of their main base and it was an absolute fustercock. Bandits casually walking in the middle of a gunfight, absolutely not giving a fuck that we're in a war. Eventually I got the leader and this is when they turned hostile, and after a quick sweep, Black Slugs were shown who's the blackest. Wait, no, that sounds wrong. The Black Slugs were sent to crawl back where they came from, most likely Albania. The next target would be the poor Renegades, such a useless faction. All they do is sit in a swamp and not pay tax, I mean pay to maintain the order. And just like that, I made sure that there were no more Renegades beautifying our zone. I noticed last day in the swamps as well, incredibly weak too. We can't have weakness in the zone, no matter if you're friendly or not. So I took them out. Now it was only the great bastards left. Cozied up north of the valley. On the way there were the Vikings, who would make fine recruits into the graveyard. So I pummeled through them with the boys and we had a new base. Easy. And now we had arrived in the fortress, where the Khans and the Infernal Inquisition were positioned. So I decided to take down the latter first, just to clean up some space. And after a big fight we took a big base and blocked their entry. Now it was time to deal with the Khans. A big firefight unfolded, third-partied by some nerds, which ended as quickly as it began, with the Khan leader meeting the ground face first. Now the only thing left was to finish up the last remaining... Wait, what is this? The Abyss. There is clearly something more going on here than just territorial warfare. Why would anyone dig such a huge hole? And how did they know what's down here? But you don't have time for that now. The mystery of the zone can wait. The last squad of Khans was in, the prototype of the Brain Scorcher. What the hell is this place? Well, I killed them. It is done. The bandit gang now reigns supreme. I returned home to see that it was lost to the military, and I had to deal with them.
Right, I'll tell you what, it's back.
So I decided it was my turn to lead the group, but Sultan refused. So he did the only logical thing. But then everyone picked up their guns against me. Clear-Sky would be the most based faction in my opinion. Since the day I first learned of them, their way of existence, something inside of me resonated with them. Probably the severe radiation poisoning. Sky is a relatively balanced faction, giving you decent equipment and decent numbers. But Conquest doesn't really make sense considering their secretive nature. This is why my goal for Clear-Sky would be to follow in their steps and achieve their original purpose. It all began like you'd expect. Shitty swamp, fuck ton of renetards, and cleaning them out one by one to make space for more chads. Fighting Renegades was far from challenging, as their IQ is far lesser than that of a S.T.A.L.K.E.R, and they will sit next to an explosive barrel every 3 seconds. The only real challenge was capturing the swamp before Intercept got their filthy hands on it. After the Renegades accidentally bombed their leader, it was time to cleanse the swamp of last day as well. And they were tucked in a nice corner next to the Tuzla tunnel, perfect for target practice. And with that, the swamps were secured. And with Peacekeepers being neutral to Clear-Sky, it would be easy to maintain. Now we would have to make our way north, so I set the faction priority to the military base and went to scout ahead. It didn't take long before I got into a firefight with the entirety of Agroprom, and had to conserve my bullets as the blockheads kept on appearing. They must have studied bandit biology with how many units they threw away. Eventually Sky squads arrived, and we were able to move in, pummeling through the FPS drops and non-stop respawning medics until the institute was ours. I went further north to scout again. With the others swarming with V.G.R soldiers, I decided to take a stealthy path around to avoid wasting precious bullets again. The OG Rostock was a nice stroll on a sunny day, looking around at the beautiful scenery, but literally nothing happened here. Skipping to Dead City where swarms of renegades were coming to assassinate me, but I really didn't wanna bother, so I kept on going north, where I accidentally found the leader of last day and killed him. Lol. And once again we're at Limansk, with all factions being neutral again, god fucking damn it. And nothing happened the entire time, so I called the entire Clear-Sky faction to the generators. Let's see how that goes. Soon I had arrived at South Chernobyl. Finally I could find some action. Well, that was quick. And now I just had to wait for the entire faction to get their asses here. Eventually I noticed that some squads made it to the generators, and I jumped right into the action, which went very well, and I had to use all of my skills of spamming medkits and bandages to make it through. I continued fighting Seacon across the generators, with a ton of S.T.A.L.K.E.Rs alongside me pushing through until... What is that? Automatic fucking Gauss rifle? Stalker had suddenly turned into a sci-fi game, with me running around gaussing sea counters, which was way too satisfying. And with the only thing left on export being the war wap, it was time to assemble. Clear Chats united, we roared into battle. Victory came ever closer and the entire Clear Sky faction arrived through the front gates. Quite literally, holy fucking shit! It was finally time to descend into the biggest challenge yet, the war wap. This is where Seacon used their secret weapon, the crash machine, forcing you to do the entire lap in one try. Crashing if you try to save, pause or die, which was honestly the most painful fucking thing ever. So I tried, I really did, but after 30 attempts I decided to leave it here.
Благодарим тебя за то, что раскрыл слугам твоим козни врагов наших. Одари сиянием твоим души тех, кто отдал жизнь во исполнение воли твоей. В бой, защитники Монолита! В бой! Отомстим за павших братьев наших! Да будет благословенно вечное их единение с Монолитом! Смерть! Лютая смерть тем, кто отвергает его священную силу!
Anomalies, dangerous mutants, Anarchists, and Bandits. None of them will stop duty on its triumphant march towards saving the planet.
Duty is the faction that appeals the most to two types of people. Rookies that just met them and thought they seem like the good guys, I'll join them. Or the most annoying schizoid freaks you're ever gonna run into that completely forgot the purpose of the faction. I have no idea what's wrong with Dutiers, but I have yet to see one that's normal. Even if you ask their leader to tell you something useful, he would just tell you to ask someone else. Also, why is my name Phil Comanche? I think I got myself a pretty fitting name for duty. I never agreed with Voronin's leadership of the faction. He literally does nothing. So I'll do everything that feels right for duty. First step is to take over the WoW territory, to establish safe route for the scientists, Stalkers on duty to help each other with the research. It didn't take long until I got into a massive firefight with the Mercs there. I was able to push them back to their camp thanks to some friendly squads, and eventually the Mercs were terminated. To further help with research, I started cleaning the mutants and zombies around the Yantar plant. They kept on flooding out, pinning me behind the truck, but they are, well, zombies. The plant was easily cleared and now it was time to spend 40k on 3 soldiers, what the fuck? Anyway, I bought a squad and we dived into the lab, where we were immediately ambushed by a zombie and lost one man in the first 30 seconds. We went deeper down the lab and lost a second man. Man, these guys fucking suck. Eventually we got into the main room, fighting a ton of zombies with Freddie Mercury alongside me, and we managed to put down the leader of the zombies as well. Which makes no sense, they're brainless, how can you lead them? Unfortunately for Freddy, the pseudo-giant happened, and for the pseudo-giant, 545 happened. Then I just proceeded to the exit with the lab now clean of our field. Next step was to fuck! These degenerate bandits have no place in the zone! So I got a huge army and we marched into the hangar. Dutiers kept running headfirst like complete morons, and eventually the bandits just bombed their leader again. And we won. LOL. Soon after, the Dark Valley base fought our crusade, and I can tell you that it was just easy. So I put my eyes on our biggest enemy, hippies. The fight with Freedom was goofy, with me using loners as cover and grenading Lukash's window from afar, but after we pushed through and took out most of them, he was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps the coward escaped, even the PDA said he's still alive. Well, that leaves us with one task left. For those that don't know, before duty was formed, they were just normal soldiers, sent on a mission to nuke the CMPP, but they failed. Where they failed now, I will succeed. I took half the faction and rushed into Pripyat, where a horde of zombies spawned right behind me and killed my squads. Very cool. Soon a storm began, and another horde appeared. I was surrounded by zombies and Monolithians, but I managed to take them out somehow. And so, the massive duty army arrived in Pripyat, where we managed to clean out the Monolithians, in probably the biggest firefight so far. And now the only step left was Chernobyl. I went ahead to clear the— What the f— Okay, I fought through armies of fanatics for hours. Soon, 2 duty soldiers arrived, but I couldn't protect them and they died. And no other backup arrived at any point. I looked at the map and they were not coming. The Inquisition had captured Pripyat. All of my duty squads were gone. We failed again. It can't all be for nothing. I will finish this myself. I started making my way through all these creatures, pushing through the narrow hallways and stairs. I reached the reactor room and got rid of the last of them. This is it. The so-called monolith they praise. Perhaps I could make a wish and save the world. I wish for the zone to be cleansed. No. It can't be. What have I done? Freedom. The zone's rebels, punkers, and substance abusers, and one of the more popular choices among zoners for the chill and easygoing attitude, unbothered, moisturized, higher than high, bombing a few orphanages for 2 grams of weed. I'd surely take a pothead over a jarhead any day, even their leader has an actual personality. Freedom's goal in the zone is to fight for free access to it, meaning no government that controls it. So pretty much turning the zone into Sarajevo. So started my journey simply, with collecting equipment and sneaking through the old Rostock and ruining the life of the Ecologists there. Soon after, I set my sights on wild territory. It didn't take long before I got sandwiched and realized that this idea fucking sucks. So I went directly to fighting with duty, which was pretty much just camping the same angle for 10 minutes. After a while we were able to push through and have a boss battle with Voronin, which was pretty epic until it ended abruptly. Now with our nemesis wiped off the zone, it should be easy to take over the rest, starting with wild territory, which was just a camp with a few exomercs. The Ecologists were our next target. You may be in the zone to find a cure for death cancer, but I do not like them and give you 3 rubles monthly, which means that your egghead needs to fucking stop existing. Unfortunately, the entire Ecologist fight was not even the Ecologists themselves, but the random V.G.R squads that had taken over the entire place, as their map has only one exit, and that's Yantar. So I cleared Yantar and moved on. Intercept. I don't know shit about them, but they seemed like military, so they needed to go. So I took a smarter approach and encircled their base before going in, which resulted in a lesser shitfest, but still a shitfest. Being stuck on a roof with no ammo and being surrounded because the Freedom Squads just refused to fucking act. Eventually, we conquered them. Well, I did while my squads did this instead. And with Intercept gone, the military soon followed. Since this was the 15th time I had done this fight, I had already learned that mass bombing was the way to go. So what, I had wiped the Ecologists' duty and 2 branches of the military. The only logical step was to take over the entrance to the zone. So, I set my sights on Cordon. First step was the south checkpoint entrance. Then, I followed it by encircling the SBO controlled farm and attacking it from the bridge. For some reason the game decided not to torture me this time and it only took like 2 minutes to capture it. I guess going in alone is just not a good idea. Soon, the entire cordon was turned into a battlefield lobby, but it was the first time that I pushed the Peacekeepers and SBO back. After securing the cordon, I went to the small hideout, and oh my fucking god do I regret it. There is no cover and both camps, each with 4 to 5 squads, immediately react to you, which was incredibly fun and I totally do not regret brute forcing my way through it. After securing it, I tried to continue to the perimeter, but I got mass arse fucked by never-ending waves of Peacekeepers and soldiers spawning in my ass. So I decided to try and run away. But then more Peacekeepers spawned in my ass as well. It was not looking good. So, I went back and tried my work at the front gates, which was incredibly painful. I was stuck behind a building for 30 real-life minutes and none of the squads I called arrived. Eventually, after I killed the 300 soldiers guarding the entrance, they arrived. Awesome. But my faction had spread up half the zone and we were incredibly juiced by now, and I could literally rush through without taking any damage. What followed should be considered a terrible day to be stationed in the zone. Even the TRF wasn't so lucky. And well, the Peacekeepers finally got what was coming to them. All those playthroughs they bullied me, but now, the edgy zoomers in F.L.K.E.R get to do the bullying. Your sobriety ends now. The cocaine-fueled schizophrenics now get to call the shots. Why the fuck is this in the script? And with that, the Peacekeepers were finished, and up north, Freedom had secured Pripyat. The faction was so powerful, we practically won. I will leave it here now, with free access to all into the zone. The Ecologists are one of the more passive factions in all of the games. Considering they're just a bunch of nerds studying the zone, that's not surprising. And so far, I've noticed that all they do in this mod is capture locations that were already contested between two factions. Most of the time both friendly to the Echoes, the lazy fucks, but I'm gonna show that the Echoes are not pushovers and can fight on their own as well. A simpler goal this time: clear a safe path between our science labs and capture the X labs along the way. It started simple, with clearing the area around X18, as it is right next to us. The only possible enemy would be the zombies, which are far from a threat. It didn't take long before I started my descent into X16. Being freshly open, it was swarming, but nothing that a
major fracture
can't fix. Soon, I reached the zomb boss and just did the well-known strat of just bomb. After that, it was time to move up to the garbage, as there was another lab there. Lab X, whatever the fuck, was full of sinners, but the layout is pretty boring and linear, fucking. So I just camped the stairs while the sinners brainlessly pushed into me again and again. Soon after, I was out of the lab and began the fight with the bandits, and they bombed Sultan for the gazillion time. Like, what is he even doing in the garbage and not in their main base? Next step would be X18, fighting the Slugs yet again. I tried to find a more interesting way to approach this battle, but there is simply one good way to fight through this base, and it's this stupid hallway. Everything else is just too dangerous for the loading times. So I just snapped my way through this with their boss just being blown up again. At this point, the faction was getting so strong it was practically impossible to lose, but let's continue. I went down to lab X18 and it was empty? Apparently the Slugs didn't even go here despite being literally under their base. Moving on, the Vikings are our next target. Okay, that was easy. Well, the Infernal Inquisition is our next target, with them occupying my last target, Lab X8. I started brute forcing my way through the shitty spawn camp base and eventually I managed to clear it out. What the fuck? Okay, that was weird, but at least it's over. Please, man. What the fuck is this shit? Half the zone just felt like inviting itself here. I guess that's one way to make playing Ecologists exciting. I moved to the next camp, clearing zombies and getting surrounded by Infernals. But they seem to be just light units, so it didn't take long before we had half of Pripyat outskirts. Now with a clear path to the last lab, I just rushed for it, and inside were just zombies and a controller, but honestly this is really disappointing. I expected at least one interesting thing in these labs, but it's literally nothing. All we got is this cool model of the Scorcher. Well, now I have all the X labs and Ecologist labs connected in a safe path and can safely do my experiments. Starting with this brain in a jar that I found in the old Yantar. Now, I wonder what happens if I do this? Mercs, the most secretive faction in the zone. Even though their entire purpose is to be freelancer loners without morals, their ranks consist entirely of contractors, Serbians looking for a decent pay, and Tarkov refugees. I actually quite enjoy playing as Mercs, as it puts you way up north and gives you easy access to more exotic equipment, in exchange for making half the zone inaccessible. But nothing you can't fix with some gun. Considering the Mercs' capitalistic tendencies, one would wish to please the stakeholders further by smashing the opposition. That 2% profit increase won't bring itself. According to the faction descriptions, Apocalypse and ISG are both contracted by the same private client, meaning they're solely to position to the freelancer market. To top it off, there is PMC Alpha. I don't know what they do, but their members should be contractors, so that's more than enough. Upon starting my capitalist ventures, I noticed that the hunters are using the Red Forest as hunting ground, without 13 permits and 87% tax. I couldn't let that slide, as it would impact our market value by 0.000003%, which is all by means unacceptable. So I started excavating them from their positions up in the forest area and eventually reached their residence. I politely inserted several lead structures into their bodily formations and contained their illegal business for the foreseeable future. With our corporation gaining momentum, it was about time I visited Apocalypse. The fight was relatively tough, as they used their secret lag weapon to force me to retreat. But eventually I threatened my PC into working overtime and it got better. Soon enough, fellow Mercs arrived and helped to easily push through their defenses and clean up the base. Now, with control of the brain rotor, we can start putting ads on every single PDA message. What about all the Stalkers that urgently need to send a message for help? So, the next step of our roadmap is to go through Pripyat towards the scientific camp in Alpha Yantar. I passed through the Monolith squads guarding the trenches of Pripyat and even had some battles inside the city itself. It didn't take long before I reached the ISG base. At this point my faction was the strongest and the Mercs easily clean out the nerds. With 2 competitors out and this brain under my control, I could insert ads directly into everyone's cranium. Wouldn't it be funny if I shot this thing? Soon I moved to Jupiter to fight with Alpha, and they were quite tough actually, spamming grenades every 2 seconds like a cornered Tarkov rat. So I did the same and cleared out Yanov with pure brute force before noticing that the Mercs had pushed through half of Jupiter plant. I arrived there and it was just mega fucking painful. You peek for 5 seconds, you get sprayed by a Val. You sit back and get naded from across the map. Luckily their leader was also prone to nading himself. Then a Merc somehow snuck in and captured their main base. And it was the end of the Alphas. With the monopoly under our control, there was nothing left to do. And then I noticed that the Mercs started pushing towards the CMPP. And it gave me an idea. Who needs an employer and shitty ad revenue when I can just wish for all the riches directly from the legendary Wish Granter? I headed to Chernobyl when— What the fuck?! Wow. With nobody else pushing, the riches were all mine. I quickly made my way to the entrance, pushing through the few Monolith forces left, and eventually reached the tube and instantly jumped in. With nobody else pushing, the riches were all mine. I started making my way through the line of fanatics. With each body under my feet, the wealth was ever closer. Who cares about a few million corpses when I never get to see any of them? One after another they fell, until I made it. The Wish Granter. With it in my hands, I could claim the world. I wish for all the riches in the zone, and, well, it gave me exactly that, one of every single item. Well, that should be worth quite a lot, but I don't feel so good.
Иди ко мне.
Being a soldier in the zone has to be the second shittiest job after being Sidrovich's private ass wiper, living day to day on 2 rubles and vodka bribes, with high command possibly sending you on unrealistic suicide missions deep in the zone, exactly when a bout amnesiac happens to be passing by. So for the military, I decided to simply complete all of their failed missions from Shadow of Chernobyl. Starting in the cordon, I needed to make my way to X-18, as that is the first operation the military performs. With loners being poorly equipped early on, I was able to quickly take over the kindergarten and slowly move up north, through the bandits in the car park and up to the farm, and the thing just did itself. With Valerian down, I just had to clean up the rest and the farm was under military control. The next location was the garbage, and you won't believe this! But Sultan got blown up again, by his own grenade. It's like he's allergic to putting any effort into anything. Next up was Dark Valley. In Shadow of Chernobyl, the military sealed all exits to the garbage, then raided the lab. But fuck that! I called the entire population of garbage to raid X-18 instead. While I was attempting to get closer to the front, I ended up hitting a random transition to the lab. Upon exiting, I was put on the other side of the building, so you could use this space bubble anomaly for a slow travel to the other side. I used this opportunity to be more aggressive, so I pushed in and it didn't take long before the Black Slugs leader blew himself up, and the battle pretty much ended there. With the lab secured, the next target was the Scorcher, but Rostock and the warehouses were in the way, and we had to push through. I took the long way around through wild territory, and ended up in a massive firefight with a duty outpost. It was more time consuming than difficult, so I called like 50 squads to help, and of course they arrived after I had done all the work. This shit just reflects on being a minimal wage worker. Eventually we got into a huge firefight in Rostock, with my master plan to attack from both entrances in full force. It didn't didn't take long before we were grinding on Voronin's front door, and after a few fails he got killed by some random soldier and Rostock was secured. The warehouses were one idea easier as I encircled them, then I moved in with 50 squads again. This time I wanted the fight to be more interesting, so I snuck in and went on top of a tower. From there I managed to be a pain in the ass for freedom, and we even got Lukash. With overwhelming forces of 300 minimum wage workers, it was no challenge and the army warehouses lived up to their name. Now, to push through the Scorcher, I again ordered like 50 squads to go there, and I went in ahead to clear a path and ended up in the brain rotor itself in no time. After once again waiting for 37 business days, eventually the soldiers arrived and the entire battle was 5 minutes. With me personally unaliving the Apocalypse leader, I really should stop calling the entire faction to do all the work. The next step was the CMPP itself, in Operation Monolith 2. This time with less helicopters since that shit never worked. I ordered the entire population of China to move up to Pripyat and went ahead again. This time taking a left turn through the bus stop, which is honestly a very underutilized location, and I ended up in a mega chaotic fight in the heart of Pripyat, with soldiers somehow spawning in the Monolith's ass. They pretty much did all the cleanup and I did the bombing of Haron. Now, with only one goal left, Chernobyl. I went in ahead as is now my main strat and somehow there was already military there. They just teleported in it seems. The rest were slow again, so I did most of the fighting myself. Eventually they arrived for the last point, and the south of Chernobyl was sterilized. Pushing up to the north side you realize how boring this part is without the teleporters. So I just ran around shooting the last remaining monos which were so weak they all had MP5s. Yeah, really not a challenge with how passive they are. You just weakened them too much by passing through. I expected more, but with Chernobyl under full military control, Operation Monolith 2 was a success. And I did it all for you, father. They say you killed the old major, that you disappeared somewhere in the zone, but I know you're still out there somewhere, and I'm going to find you one day. The Renegades are one of the factions of all time, consisting of the biggest scum from the Stalker Reddit. Their only role is to be tutorial enemy in clear sky, so they really don't have anything going on for themselves. They simply exist in the swamps and get bullied by absolutely everyone for being so fucking useless. Well, I will achieve their only goal that they've had in the games, and that is to be a menace to clear sky, and I'll do it with just 2 PMs. I summoned our renegades to the top of the map to give the boys in blue a chance to build their defenses, and I started to slowly capture the locations one by one. I also declared a war on last days is literally irrelevant, and helped them to go die off again. After 30 minutes of walking around the swamps, eventually it was time to see how Clear Sky did, and they got like 4 points. I swear nobody's even trying. Well, I started the fight and easily got past their 4 points, so the final sitting behind a tree session began, until I got randomly murked. So I tried again and my second attempt began the same way, but eventually I pushed into one of the huts. With fellow renegades inviting themselves into battle, it looked good for me. Eventually we had Lebedev isolated, and with the power of corners coming, the PMs defeated him, and Clear Sky fell. While with the swamps firmly under renegade control, there was nothing left to do, other than getting mega drunk. The Hunters are one of the factions that just make sense in the zone. Enthusiast mutant hunters to do duty's job for them, and for free even! They are a very popular faction in most Russian mods out there, their special thing being that they use only shotguns and get their ammo very cheap. And you also get this hunting crossbow, which is actually really fucking cool. And they stood out to me in a way, so they'll be the first new faction I'll go through. The first thing I wanted to do was take control of the Red Forest, as it is simply a very good hunting ground, but it didn't take long before the nearby Mercs started harassing the hunters, and I needed to hunt down something human-shaped. Thankfully not the Freeman. and after securing the Red Forest, I moved down south to the ATP. Soon enough, we had a civil disagreement with a gang of Romanians that were settled in the middle. They were trying to take advantage of all that firewood surrounding this nothingness of a map, but eventually, we came out on top after hunting them to extinction. With Romanians extinct, I needed to take over the forest. Being one of the main hubs for the hunters, I had it neglected for the sake of storytelling. So, I noticed more of the said Romanians occupying parts of it. With their illegal lumber business not being very, well, legal, I had to once again hunt them down till the last one dropped. With the forest secured, now we had to move on to the actual hunting in another forest. The Forgotten Forest. Home of the things known as Dark Stalkers, monsters of the zone, the perfect creatures to hunt down, created by huffing cocaine from the exhaust of a Mercedes. With their eerie Albanian origins, there was nothing but fear and poverty resonating from them. I began the hunt by going from camp to camp, encircling Tirana in the process. With them putting up a good fight, I eventually got out the camps, and now it was time for Tirana itself. After that intense incursion, the Forgotten Forest was cleared and hunters settled in. But there was one more thing left to do. Sin. A dead cult of monsters. The perfect challenge for a hunter. With them cuddled up in Darkscape, it would be a long journey, so I prepared extra. I made my way through their surrounding camps before an emission hit and forced me to bomb an orphanage where they were hiding. I swear! Eventually I got to the entrance of the mines, an eerie place, filled with cultists to the brim. I moved through it quickly, trying to find where their leader is hiding, even being forced to survive a size storm in the open by chugging every PO I had, because a train tunnel in a mountain is considered in the open. Eventually I reached their hole and our fight began. I couldn't push up from the number of monsters charging at me. Spitting buckshot from ranges I wish the game balance allowed me to hit. After a long fight I eventually managed to push in, but I was stuck again. Now attacked from two sides, the sinners kept on spawning again and again, not leaving me any room to breathe. With supplies running very low, I just had to hold on until help arrived. I had to make a last stand. I rushed Chernobog with a grenade and managed to take him down. Then I hid behind a rock to try to outlast the endless wave of cultists. There was no other way, I had to try. Sin, one of the more interesting cut factions. It is not exactly clear what their goals or motivations would be, as the leaked design documents are the only official information about the faction. The community has plenty of takes on the faction, from the poverty rip-off Monolith of Anomaly to the death code of Oblivion Lost remake, with everything you can think of in between. Global War keeps the faction open-ended, letting the player draw their own conclusion on what they really are, and my playthrough started in an interesting way. After the death of Chernobog, the hunters needed to pay for what they did, so I started my incursion by trying to get out of the fucking mines. It was the biggest challenge so far. Everywhere you go, you end up with more tunnels. With no map, I had to work entirely on squad dots. Eventually I found a random group of sinners and just followed them around, but I could tell that even they were struggling. Eventually I managed to get out, and immediately got shot. The first logical step was to take over Darkscape, as there were settlers trying to make a living, which is legal under our new Darkscapian leader. I quickly sent a eviction notice and soon moved to Dark Valley. I didn't wish to stick around as I just needed to get to the forest, so I took over the farm and split the valley in two just to mess with the settlers of Northern Darkscape. Eventually I got to the forest and the hunt began. It didn't take long until I realized that being out at night is a terrible idea. Despite Sin being nocturnal, it was just as equally terrible to fight at night. Didn't help that the hunters were immune to buckshot, so I bullshitted my way through this until I was at the hunter's hut. I lured them out into the forest where I started taking them down one by one, and under their nose I sent 2 sinner groups to hit their base, and before they realized, the hunters became the hunted, and the forest was cleansed. Next up I needed to pass through to the red forest, but first I needed to go through duty. Wait, they're not hostile? Who'd have ever imagined a sinner and a duty are fighting shoulder to shoulder? Well, turns out they were fine only with me. I guess I was one of the pale sinners. Well, I couldn't let them attack my brother, so I had to avenge them. I used my advantage to strike from behind. Then I declared a war on duty and used more conventional means of warfare. With a quick passage through the metallurgical plant, and through Dead City, and through the ATP, I was finally in the red forest. The hunters were weak and pushed back to their own base by the Mercs, but I couldn't let them steal the revenge from me. I hit them in the back, but unfortunately it was night again, so it was more pain in the ass than anything. Eventually I cleared out the whole place and it was time to move in. With seen by the pearly gates of the hunters, they had nowhere to run. One by one they fell. Even their leader came out and so he was laid to rest. With that the hunters were hunted to extinction. Vengeance was ours, and perhaps the forest wouldn't mind the new ruler. The Nightstar Intercept Collective Force Special Operations Center Research Tactical and Operations Group, also known as NICFSORCTO, is basically just military stalkers. This faction is not entirely made up, as it is mentioned in one of the dialogues in Shadow of Chernobyl that Intercept are the top military stalkers. They even went to the center and learned how to tame dogs. They also seem to heavy duty with duty for some odd reason, which makes me theorize that their entire idea was to intercept the rogue soldiers that became the duty stalkers. They really don't play any different than your normal military, except that they are fine with clear sky and loners. Their faction description literally says that they are better trained militaries that perform heavy duty missions in the zone. So that is it really. They sounded much more interesting looking from the side, but now let's give them a chance. With the only thing that I know about them being that they are roided soldiers that hate duty, I decided that would be my main goal. And well, with Agroprom being a relatively safe ground and underground, like seriously there is nothing in the undergrounds for some reason, I was able to quickly move on to the garbage. There, the bandits were in the way to duty. Got into a gunfight with them, and due to my insane intelligence, I forgot to record any of it. But trust me, I managed to finally kill Sultan without him blowing himself up for once. I will even visualize it for you.
Hoca Sidorovic'in Fox diye bir eleman var. Biz bunu kaçırdık. Peşinden alan gönderdi bu Fox'u geri almak için. Adamın siz mesela Sidorovic'e şöyle bir flash drive var.
With garbage secured, there was only one thing left, and that was Rostock. There was only one way that I didn't use yet, and that was bang on in the middle of Rostock. So I went right for it, and soon an emission began. So I sneaked into the bar unnoticed. With 4 intercept squads waiting on my command to go into the Rostock plant, I had quite the spearhead into duty territory, and with the emission over, it was time to attack. Well, nading bosses is just the best way to deal with them. Now for Intercept I tried to do a bit more on the story side, but it all turned into me sending 50 squads into the fortress for an epic battle, only for all of them to just disappear after waiting half an hour. And by the time they arrived, ISG had secured half the territory. And I got bored, so I made Prince bomb himself, then I jumped down the big ass hole. What? The game doesn't even let me Kahoot myself. Even it is that bored from Intercept. Well, this faction really needs to be made more unique in my opinion. Having 5 military factions doesn't really do it any favors if all it has going on for itself is red barrettes and funny walk animation. Well, with that, I'll just move on ahead. The Vikings, also known as the Variacs, are one of the factions of all time, their entire thing being that they are based on power! They have absolutely zero fucking goals in the zone. They exist to exist, and pure POWER! And their relations make no fucking sense. They hate loners and scientists, but are friendly with duty. I don't see any fucking power here. So I decided that this time I'll do an Iron Man run with agony mode. This would surely make me play more carefully and slow down the pacing. My first target being the hunters, because why the fuck not? But the forest was harsh, and I tried to take it slow, schizoing the fuck out so nobody shotguns me up my ass. Eventually, I managed to grab some gear, and later decided to attack the main base of the hunters. It was already weakened by earlier Viking attacks, so all I did was give the last push. Despite that, it was still tense, as any mistake could be fatal, like being born in Eastern Europe. Upon returning to the Vikings base, it was under attack by the Great Khans, which I epically didn't record. They would be our next target. No one disrespects IKEA and makes it out alive. So I shipped myself into the fortress and began vandalizing their stuff. Despite working overtime, they did a decent job to keep me at bay. Usually, I'd rush in, guns blazing, but now I had to take it slow. But over time, I built my confidence and started being more aggressive. Of course, it didn't change the fact that half of the fortress was controlled by friendly ISG, and with some luck, friendly fire soon followed, which made it far worse than it should be. After some efforts, I just decided to bomb Prince and moved on. The next target would be V.G.R, because I haven't touched them even once. But to get through them I need to first secure Yantar, which had a few V.G.R soldiers sprinkled in, between all the nerds that normally habitate the lab. Despite being stuck behind a truck at first, some lead poisoning led to several Kurillian crewmates ejected from life and the bunker was secured. Soon enough I got into a fight with a V.G.R squad on top of the hill, which quickly turned into getting flanked by Intercept. And before they even spotted me, another V.G.R squad spawned up my ass, turning this into the average African conflict. Even a bloodsucker joined in at some point, so I dipped. Then my game crashed, and I was sent back. So I ran away from that shit before it even happened. Except that this time Intercept had taken the lab, so I intercepted their thought process with a bullet. Up next was finally the test site, where the V.G.R test their cock and bow torture devices, presumably. Through a base in the dense forest and Ukrainians' flattest railway, I soon met my first real danger. The AS Vow. It quickly reminded me of my mortality, and forced me to be more careful. These V.G.R veterans were a really strong enemy. It didn't take long before I found myself at the gates of their main base, and the fight began. After a while, I ran back outside to finish off the final remaining V.G.R soldiers before more spawned in. Then I got a bit carried away and let my guard down. And so, the Iron Man run ends. From a fucking bison. But it was definitely a much more enjoyable experience than I originally expected. Let's move on now. Apocalypse, a faction consisting of private military contractors fitted with a neuro implant that blocks their emotions and long-term memories, with their entire purpose being to test climate weapons in the zone with no restrictions. According to the game, they are considered to be the strongest faction, and for some reason they're neutral with Peacekeepers. Like bro, ain't no way these guys want peace, let me fix that. They are also featured in the mod Stalker Apocalypse, which I have made a terrible video about. Their entire goal is to create weapons of mass destruction, and for that they need the zone. And what is better placed than the CMPP itself? But before that I need to acquire the iconic M1000 dagger, and only one NPC had it. and that was the Renegades leader. I started my mission in the Red Forest, where it didn't take long before I got into a firefight with both the Mercs and the Hunters, with mixed results to say the least. Despite my skill issues, I managed to take down the Hunter leader and take over the base. Following the path south, I made my way through the ATP to Dead City, where a huge number of Mercs were procreating. So I made my way to the school and had a very jolly wholesome time learning what happens when a movable object enters a soon not to be very movable body. With this being my first time fighting in Dead City, I had quite a pain in the ass dealing with the Mercs. Not because it's hard, but because they kept respawning before I killed all of them. Eventually I prevailed after half an hour of memorizing each step of the sports house stairs, but the pain continued south to the metal plant, where the Mercs were awaiting past the gates, an actual army, waiting to force me to run up and down the stairs of the construction site to hunt down the one guy hiding in a corner before everyone else respawns. After my 17 nervous breakdown, I somehow managed to get the last one in time, and the metal plant was back to work. Next up was Yantar, the first victims of Apocalypse weapons, but not this time. I had to secure it the old school way. The Ecologists had already been weakened by their own incompetence, and V.G.R had taken over the bunker. Luckily for me, they got third-partied by Intercept, with me being able to pick them off one by one from afar, and put V.G.R in a hard place. And with very few interceptors left, I could safely sell all of my goodies to Shakarov for 18 rubles. Awesome! The last big objective left was Agroprom. I started to slowly approach the Institute when an emission hit, and I was forced to dive in headfirst into Intercept's base. Well, that went well. Next up was the swamps. I did not have any intentions of sticking around, with my only goal being the dagger. I rushed to the main base and got the Renegades some trouble, bombing their leader and stealing the dagger. With the dagger in my hands, it was time to head north. The Great Khans are a bit of an odd faction. They're not necessarily bandits, nor good Stalkers either. According to the game lore, they're just people that have experience with weapons outside the zone and complicated fates. Despite still being somewhat of a gangster group, they choose to maintain their discipline. Well, since the Great Farts don't really have any ideology in their story, I decided to make them truly great, by being the first gang to capture the northeastern parts of the zone. But first, I needed to deal with the enemy south, the Vikings. With them being significantly stronger than the Khans, I needed them out of the game early. I snuck in alone and started taking out small groups to weaken them, but soon I noticed a group of the Great Tarts rushing in and went ahead to try to save their asses. But they got themselves killed quickly, and now I was stuck behind a jeep. I eventually got out and found a bigger group of Khans, and together we steamrolled the Vikings up to their base, where a well-placed DHL delivery put their leader on a trip to Valhalla, which put an end to their existence. Next up would be the Ecologists and ISG in the old Yantar. The Ecologists bunker was in the open, so a quick raid saw the IQ levels of Alpha Yantar to instantly drop. My next plan being to go through the underground tunnels up to ISG's base, and I was able to learn that I'm not very good with elevators. On my second attempt I managed to get up and strike the nerds from behind, and even force the ISG leader to bomb himself. And with that, the IQ levels of Yantar dropped to negatives. Since the entrance to Jupiter was bandit territory, I had to declare them war and fight them face to face, which they didn't quite follow. Eventually I got through their bullcrap and put my sights on PMC Alpha, but the second I attacked, an emission hit and forced me to rush into a bunker full of them. With Discount Bear being pushed back to their base, I thought it would be easy, but then their secret frame Scorcher made it impossible to fight, so I decided to back out and let my squads deal with it, and instead I picked to fuck with the Ecologists and then the Loners in Yanov, which went significantly better. With Jupiter being under the control of the Great Shards, only Zaton was left. In Zaton, my first target was its heart, Skadovsk. But to get to it, I had to pass the bridge, then whatever the fuck this building was. With most Loners being very poorly equipped, it was not that bad. Ah shit. Despite how, I finally got to Skadovsk. With Skadovsk captured, that was pretty much the war won. I quickly went to clear Shevchenko. Oh, for fuck's sake. And after capturing Shevchenko, the rest was pretty much small camps. And it didn't take much before the entirety of Zaton was under the control of your mother, and the playthrough ends here. This faction has shit armor. V.G.R is a Russian paramilitary faction specifically trained to get a piece of the zone pie. There is nothing special about them other than being Russian, just one of the 5 military factions in the zone. You'll barely even see this faction anywhere in the zone other than their own spawn location and sometimes Yantar, if they don't immediately get shut down by Intercept or the Mercs. So I have a solution to that problem. I decided to just try to go into another Iron Man run and see how far I can get, and this time I really prepared with my gear. For exactly this reason. With Yantar being the only place to go and the Ecologists being neutral to V.G.R, I just went ahead and cleaned the mutants and zombies around the factory to claim some territory. With Duty being neutral as well, I hopped to wild territory to claim a chunk from the Mercs. Unfortunately, I had some skill issues with my conventional warfare, so I had to use more unconventional means of actually fighting, if that even made any difference, and with numeral advantage the territory was secured. And about now, I realized that I want to play without any HUD elements, so we're going hardcore from now. Without HUD, it slowed down the pacing even more, as now I couldn't run around and know when to spam medkit bandage. The metal plant was next on my list, and soon enough I got myself into a Merc base together with a single other soldier, and we secured it. From there, an army of V.G.R spawned and we started fighting my way through the construction site, since V.G.R kept assisting the Mercs. With numbers being crucial, we put push through the tunnel and capture the site, with far less difficulties than last time. The Fallen Angels had yet to be attacked even once, so I tried my luck in the Limansk train station. It looked cool, but soon I realized this was not a good idea. With the entire area being very open, I was stuck behind the locomotive. With me heavily encircled, I tried to hide, but they kept on approaching, and, well... Wind is a faction that consists of the Clear-Sky members that survived the Great Emission at Chernobyl. They have now devoted their lives to protecting Limansk and the surrounding area. If they're not scratching their bows, they research blowout scenarios and stand out with their amazing power of choice. I'd call this faction a Clear-Sky midlife crisis, if their base wasn't located right under the Duga, which definitely gives them style points. With no real enemies around them other than the Phantoms, I still needed to protect Limansk. So, I declared war on everyone around the city and set out on a crusade. The Hunters were the first on the list. With more simplistic methods of just bringing a sniper rifle, I managed to hunt down them one by one, including the leader, and the rest of the forest was a snooze fest. With the gates of that city being guarded by Last Day, they were a threat for once, even having some random ass Gauss rifle, so I brute forced my way through their shit. Past Shard Day was the Mercs, which was as always a massive clusterfuck of running around hunting down the last one while more and more spawn. After tearing my ass 17 times, eventually the Mercs were finished, and that city was deader than dead. It was starting to get windy in the Limansk train station. But unfortunately it was just gas, as even after calling out the faction in, I was still stuck in the middle of the train station with nowhere to go. The map is open and there is nowhere to hide. Eventually a single winder appeared, and he just dragged the entire Fallen Angels faction out of their main base and forced me to have another mental breakdown trying to salvage a decent attack. Eventually my backup arrived, and we were quick like the wind to rush in and bomb the Fallen Angels leader. And after way too long, we had secured the station. Next stop was Kurchatov 37, where the Phantoms dwell. Due to the rain, I had a slow entry that quickly devolved into rushing and no-scoping like it's a 2011 COD lobby. And soon, the siege of the Palace of Culture was on. And now, the real deal. Getting to the generators. Clear Sky can't let 1 and 2 and like 17 failures to stop them. So, I approached Chernobyl, quickly making my way through the sidelines and eventually sneaking into the hospital. The generators, the most eerie place in the zone, not because of the machinery itself, but them. The Seacon soldiers are especially nasty, and with Monolith squads constantly spawning in to hunt me down, it was no easy task. But I did it. One by one Seacon fell, and with them the last base of the Monolith, well, if you ignore the CMPP. And now, I know better than to go into the lab, fuck that. Time to chill by the campfire and enjoy the wind. Black Slugs, a faction made on the go by a former Renegade master. He did it by recruiting all the WoW lives in the zone. Originally, this faction was supposed to be just a bandit gang in the old Dark Valley map, which would fight against another bandit gang, but eventually the idea got scrapped by GSC. And in Global War, they are...
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
I absolutely despise the Black Slugs. Their entire function is just to be cannon fodder. They literally sound like an Iswam with a gun. It makes me physically rot every time I have to fight them. Their base layout fucking sucks, and they're too useless to spread anywhere on their own. Their literal only function is to sit in the corner of X18 and jerk each other off to the thought of being fucking useless. Literally, Zombified have more going on for them than Black Slugs, and with that said... The Zombified are Stalkers from all over the zone that fell victim to Psi radiation, completely frying their brains and leaving them with no higher function other than their primal reflexes. And yet, they're still more mentally capable than Twitter users. With zombies, I decided to just give myself 3 lives in Azazel mode and see how far I can get. So, I began by... Okay, that was fast, let's not count that. I reincarnated into a random zombie merc in Agroprom, and I attempted to take over the Ecologists, which strangely worked out despite my entire army having the collective IQ of -37. I soon moved on to Rostock and got into a fight with Duty, which didn't go very well. Next life I spawned in Zaton. Now noticing the issue of not having any meds or traders, I went towards a loner camp and got into a fight with them, like what I've been doing for the entire video so far. But unfortunately my skill issues came back rapidly and I got domed in a tunnel. Now I spawned in Pripyat and seconds later I was in the laundromat, and I actually succeeded with a fight for once. But soon enough, while clearing the cans from Pripyat, I got flanked and game ended. Okay, last life now since this kinda sucks. I spawned in Zaton and it was in the middle of the night and you couldn't see shit. So, I fought through the reeds and eventually ended up in Skadovsk. With another boat fight I was actually having fun for half a second before I got flanked again, and yeah... Zombies kinda suck, but Black Slugs suck more. The Peacekeepers, the blue helmets. I don't need to explain what a UN Peacekeeper is, I assume. With a role to secure the perimeters by more peaceful means. With really good equipment and easy access to several bases, they are absolutely unstoppable, and the second they spread north, you just pack your shit and leave. So, for their goal, I will secure the perimeter, which is already completed, so I decided to take over V.G.R, as they are the only faction I never successfully bullied. To start it off, I captured the 10 rats bar at the perimeter, and the secret camp, which sent the Peacekeepers from 20th to 7th on strength. Cordon was next, and soon the blue helmets began securing Sidorovic's business in the kindergarten of Cordon, with Skamarovich now selling peas half of the Cordon was buying. Next up was the swamps, where our fellow boys in blue fucking suck at protecting themselves. So we gotta step in and deliver a piece of peace! That went well. With the swamps pacified, it was now time to move up north. Yantara was the next step before the test site. With the majority owned by Ecos and the rest free, I rushed in for the base above X16, and I waited and waited. With fruitless attacks by the Mercs and Loners and V.G.R, eventually the Peacekeepers managed to bring their asses to the base after half an hour, and we secured the base from which to attack. And so, the final deliverance began, the V.G.R owned test site. What exactly they're testing, I'm not sure. Perhaps their own ventures into the zone. It first began with one base, before transitioning into me encircling their main base, pushing in and making my way through the V.G.R soldiers that are so weak because they just have nowhere to spread. And it was easy to deal with the leader as well, with him just getting stuck on a door and me just... And the peace was delivered. So was the peace. The Dark Stalkers are a clan of semi-mutated stalkers living in a desolate forest. Not much is known about them other than their grotesque appearance, living in harmony with the zone fauna and their desire to help some masters of the zone. It is most likely that they wish to help the Monolith or Seacon, but I like to believe there is something more out there. Starting in the forest, my goal was to reach Dead City, where the master is known to reside, and I will do it with Azazel mode. So I started in Cordon, beginning a fight with the bandits. Ah shit. Okay, Grishko Vandalo, let's do this. Fuck man. At least I got respawned as a companion, so it was quick, and it was going pretty well. Come the fuck off. After the 4th vessel, we captured just the fucking bandit base, and while exploring more of the cordon, I ran into Father Valerian, and sent him to buy milk. With only the farm left, the northern cordon was secured. Next step was the garbage, so I immediately rushed to the depot, but I kind of fucked up. And upon arrival, I noticed that the depot was just empty. They literally just gave it to us, man. I guess Sultan just retired. Rostock was next, and it quickly devolved. Devolved into what, man? Fuck's sake. And with Rostock secured, we can now chill in the bar with my fellow mutards. Next up was to pass through the army warehouses, with the only interesting place to take being the Bloodsucker village. For obvious reasons. Freedom gotta be stopped. Soon me and my very beautiful companion arrived at the ATP, where the biggest torture ever began of me dying stupidly, being respawned across the zone, and running back just to get donked again and bleed out. Man, fuck this game. And after dying 70 more times, the medic just refused to do his one job. And by the time I arrived, the Dark Stalkers had capped it. Nice. Finally, we arrive at the final destination, Dead City. With Dark Stalkers flooding the city, it quickly turned into the average Middle East conflict. Like, you can't understand what's going on anymore. Even Blend from last day was in the middle of the city. Well, not for long. So now, to focus on making Dead City deader, I started taking pot shots at the Mercs, before moving into the Remainers and bombing Dushman. He's dead man now. To finish it up, I need to clear up the last day bar. I just died to a dead guy. With the bar dead as well, Dead City was now ours. As the master demanded, I will now be worthy to visit him. I could still feel his presence in the tunnels, but when I got there, it was just zombies. Where the fuck is the master? Perhaps they took him away. Well, at least I got a city to my name now. PMC Alpha, a Russian counter-terrorist unit in the zone acting in its own interest, most of the time by causing terrorism. There is absolutely nothing that makes this faction stand out. They're literally just red mercs. Not even capping, they were that in the older version. Their only reason to be in the zone being to eliminate dangerous gangsters or mutants. Well, just like half the zone, fucking original. And the faction seems to consist entirely of Soviet Trifonov's biggest fans. And since they have the voice lines from Tarkov's Bear, I will make their nemesis to be the faction that looks like Yuzek. I began my journey like any other, by causing incomprehensible levels of violence in the Gurkovo train station, as any alpha male would. And with the station under WoW penetration control, I moved on to the fortress. The Great Khans habitate this location, so perhaps it is time to fight, so Alpha may live up to their name. I packed my best terrorism plan and began bulldozering through the mid-cunts, running through their base and bombing their leader. And with the gangsters done, it was time for the scavs. With the scavs and the boss defeated, the arena was ours. It was time to move on to a tourist vacation, as in their location. With Intercept, I mean USEC, being one of the stronger factions, I really had to push my nerves to get through their bullshit. And Alpha, I mean Bear, being slow as fuck to help, I was really not having any fun this time around. I don't know, maybe inserting half a Mac into a guy wasn't very fun when every single enemy was like that. Eventually, I managed to push through with the PMC Pain and music was finished. Now, I will never ever touch this faction again since I don't have insurance fraud. And the map now looks like this. The Phantoms are a faction of seasoned professionals working directly for S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Their main purpose is to train Monolith soldiers, conduct special combat operations, and have some of the best drip in the zone. And they are even friendly with mutants. Despite literally being S.T.A.L.K.E.'s mercenaries, they are kind of interesting. But ultimately, all they do is sit in Dead City 2 up north and barely ever move anywhere, due to their neighbors being the lazy rock lovers and wind, which has its main base right in the beginning of Limansk. With Monolith being the laziest they've ever been, the Phantoms needed to up their training. And to do that, I need to improve the signal. Perhaps some brain rot could stimulate the Monolith to return to their former glory. But first I needed to get through Wind and the Duga, which would be a useful asset. With the gates of Limansk immediately leading to Wind's HQ, it was chaos from the beginning. Wind weren't pushovers either and their equipment was quite good, so my skill issues were more visible than ever. Eventually I managed to peek into the Duga, and I blew away their leader quite early. The rest was pretty much like pissing against the wind because of the incredible FPS, but eventually the fighting was over and Duga was ours, and soon the rest of Limansk followed. Next up were the Hunters. Perhaps the Monolith could use this area to learn how to fight mutants, because for some reason they fight with mutants, but the Hunters were kinda strong, so I needed some more help. Nice! The rest was just cleaning out the weekend leftovers, and Red Forest was secured, lol. Finally arriving at the Brain Scorcher, it was time to take it back from Apocalypse. Since for some reason the Monolith are too lazy to do it themselves, so somewhere between getting wrecked and shooting unarmed Apocalypsers, I got their leader taken care of, and the start of Apocalypse began. And it was not easy, they are really strong, but ultimately the solution is gone. Past Apocalypse, the Brain Rotor was secured. Now Monolith should be motivated. I think I know the problem. The Infernal Inquisition. With them doing all the work in expanding the word of the Lord and Savior, Monolith, the Monolith soldiers decide to take up alcoholism to cope with their cured schizophrenia. So, I declared them war, packed 4 K.E.V.R plates and went to the depths of hell. Well, that sure was something. With the Inquisition destroyed, the Monolith shall be able to reclaim their spot as the sole defender of Monolith.
Благодарю тебя за то, что
A son of a bitch. ISG is an international research group. Their only difference compared to the Ecologists is that they know which way a gun fires. Most of you probably know ISG from Anomaly or Gamma, where they are depicted as an incredibly meat UN Spec Ops, but they are literally just nerds. But not Among Us. ISG were supposed to appear in Clear Sky, most likely as a rival for the Ecologists in the faction war. So we revived that idea for this playthrough. With the starting map of ISG having an echo bunker, it was a clear target. So it was time to do the brains versus brains, with the ISG intelligence clearly having a bit of a brainwag. But with some more brawn and gun, the Alpha Hunter was secured and it was time to move up north to Jupiter. So I got my nerd repellent and you know the rest. With the northern bunker secured, it was time to move through half the zone to the main one. With the fortress not being a clear target, I simply captured some of the bases and moved down south. Unfortunately, the Vikings, and the Hunters, and Duty, and the Mercs, and literally half the factions were neutral to ISG, so it was more of a walking simulator than actual warfare. I eventually arrived in the metal plant and began clearing out the remaining cranium in the zone. With the Ecologists unable to leech off territory, they're just incredibly weak. So, let's see how their main base is doing. They're literally the most helpless faction in the zone, man. Well, with the Echoes extinct and ISG stuck in Dark Valley because they're too fucking stupid to go through the forest, I had the bunker to myself. Cool. I couldn't really be arsed after 25 factions, let's move on. The Infernal Inquisition is formed by the fanatical remnants of the Monolith, with their entire purpose being to kill, using the heaviest arsenal available, and for some reason they're neutral with wind. So, you're telling me the fanatical Monolith is buddies with the Clear Sky that got nuked? Believable. Since Monolith in this mod is the laziest faction of all, the Inquisition bears the burden of thinking of the shiny rock and trying to spread the word. So, it was up to me to lead this crusade, with the goal to secure the north. East. But before I got to it, I secured Pripyat and needed to move to the fortress. With the Great Farts once again suffering early game defeat, perhaps it's time for them to rethink their base location and skill set. With the fortress secured, it was time to move up to the science station. But considering that the entire population of this place is either brain dead or brain dead, you can imagine how it went. Moving on, next up was Jupiter, and I decided to give my last try at taking over PMC Alpha. Well, that was quite the experience. Let's not do that again. Moving up to the Gurkovo train station once again, and it was taken over by the Echoes with a mix of Mercs, but ultimately their fate was not enough. So I quickly delivered the message directly to the Echo bunker, and it was time to move up to Zaton, which was taken over by the Monolith and zombies, and to be honest, the only place that matters is Kadovsk, so I took it back from the zombies, and after securing Zaton, let's see how the Monolith did pushing south.
Bruh.
These lazy fucks. With Monolith being the most useless pieces of shit, it was time for a change. The Monolith is weak, and their lack of faith in the Monolith only holds us back, so it was time to rise up. With the Monolith now replaced by true believers, it was time for the wish I deserve. Yeah, I want you to pass out. Oh, I broke it. Shit. The Fallen Angels are a faction of elite fighters specially prepared for the conditions of the zone. Their objective is to destroy enemy factions, especially Apocalypse, and to wear some of the best zone drip while doing it. But for some reason it feels like that is a bland description for a faction named Fallen Angels. I think if there were a faction that was marked by the zone and caused them to have some unnatural abilities, it would be far more interesting concept than Le Loners and Le Mercenaries made Le Factions to let's stop Apocalypse. Well, it was time to fulfill their main goal. I started in Dead City, where Last Day is busy being the most mid faction in the zone. So I sowed them for the gazillion time before starting a bar fight that pretty much was the same as when I worked in a bar. I also went through the ATP, but OBS didn't record that, but it was something along those lines. Insert appropriate meme, nice. With some territory acquired and my bank account expanded in-game, I equipped myself for the brain rotor and it was time to cause some chaos. But even with the Scorcher secured, there was still a couple Apocalypse members inside the bunker. Okay, not anymore. I also wonder what happens when I pull this lever. Nothing it seems. Well, the Fallen Angels are the strongest faction and Apocalypse is no more. I think that my job is done here. Last Day is a faction that canonically existed at some point in the trilogy, but the information on the faction is limited since they were wiped out by Ghost. The Last Day members believed that sooner or later there would be a great mission which would expand the zone further beyond its current borders. They're also studying psi fields and creating psi weapons. Global War keeps their goals true to their original concept, with the exception that they are now in the Empire business, creating the biggest psi-block business across the zone. Literally every member will have at least 2 stacks of pills. Following their ideology, I would need to capture the psi fields across the zone, but first I needed territory, so I went south from their base to Dead City. The battle with the Mercs was the usual nonsense, of them growing out of the ground indefinitely. I guess it was harvest day for the Merc fields, but after half an hour and a lot of stairs camping, the Dutchman was dead and the Corn City was secured. It was time to move south, and I forgot that the metal plant was in the way before WAPEX 16, so without medkits I had to take it slow. But it didn't take long before it turned into the same bullshit as every other time. The Mercs attacked the factory while the construction workers kept respawning. Luckily Last Day helped for once, and the momentum shifted into swiping the Mercs base by base, and the metal plant was secured. Moving down to the lab, the Ecologists got there before we did, but I got a shotgun that can change that. The takeover was quick due to the weak resistance, so I decided to leave the rest of the faction to deal with the lab itself. It was time to move north to take Duga from Wind, and honestly the Limansk is one of the best maps to fight on. Moving through the streets you can tell it was designed perfectly for that. Soon I reached Duga and decided it was time for more conventional warfare. With Wind winded and Limansk secured, it was time to aim for the Scorcher, but first I needed to pass the Red Forest, which was heavily guarded by Mercs. It was an absolute clusterfuck when coming from Limansk, since you arrived directly at their base. Surrounded by several squads of Mercs, I had to further weaken their population the hard way, and on top of that, 100 of them spawned right up my ass, and this is peak Global War. Red Forest secured, it was time for the Scorcher. For some reason Apocalypse was barely present. I took down a few guards, then managed to sneak into the room where their leader was, and assassinated him quietly. The rest was just a bit of cleanup and waiting for Last Day to arrive to the points. Well, that's how psi emitters captured. Let's see what happened to the rest of the faction. this faction is fucking useless. The Security Service of Ukraine is a special-purpose law enforcement agency engaged in securing Ukraine's national security. In the Stalker lore, the SBU are the ones that sent T.R.F. on a mission to find out what happened with the Stingray helicopters, and it is most likely that they are the ones that direct the zone branch of the military. With the faction isolated at the bottom of the map, and most likely beaten in the race to the cordon by the Peacekeepers, it is rare to see them spread anywhere up north, or south, or east. They can't just sit there. So, my goal will be very simple. To make my way to all 5 Stingray helicopters. It will be the longest part, so let's begin. The first part would be to secure the perimeter, as in to take the bar in the Stalker village and down 93 vodkas. And after securing the perimeter, it was time to move to the secret hideout. The hideout is especially easy to capture from the south side, literally being 2 free bases that are impossible to lose and sends your faction ahead by quite a lot. This shit is just too OP. Following it was the cordon, which began with me getting into a firefight with the bandits at the ATP, before gradually devolving to shooting up Sidrovich's kindergarten. And around now the SBU had awoken, capturing the empty farm and moving up to the bandit factory as the last piece of the cordon collection. Now, with the faction gaining momentum, it was finally time to head back into the mines and terminate scene once and for all. This time I tried to make a map of the mines in my head, but it made no sense as the tunnels twist around each other. After passing a few camps, I triggered the entire faction and they started snaking towards me, so I used that to my advantage and had them tunneled in the big tunnel, so it was time for bomb. And of course, right after a Psy mission began. With the tunnel not counting as cover, I overdosed on Cyblock and finally captured the mines. I am never going back there. Next up was the Dark Valley. With my favorite shitfucks, I mean black slugs, this time the battle was actually entertaining. And it was because seeing ass hunters decide to spawn up my buttock, while I was surrounded in the middle of nowhere. And after giving Sin more screen time and violating Muddy's corpse, the base was secured and I decided to check out the lab next. Yeah, I'm good. Let's check the bandits instead. Yeah, that's better. Eventually the bandits were cleared out, and with that, Dark Valley was secured. Next up was the Vikings, and honestly, fuck this faction, they're mid as fuck. You get barely any screen time, fuck you, moving on. The fortress was next, and it was owned by 3 different factions, with the Vikings south, Infernal Inquisition to the west, and east the main base of the Khans still somehow kicking. So, I decided to give the last kick and send off the Khans appropriately by humiliating their leader. Damn, bro really got killed by AI. With that, the fortress was secured and the SBU had spread to the garbage and the Forgotten Forest by themselves. So proud of them. And moving to the science station. I literally wasn't there yet by the time half were bombed. Impressive. Up next, Jupiter was dominated by PMC Alpha. That is for some reason neutral to the SBO, what the fuck? Here is where I could reach my first objective, one of the Stingray helicopters. After suffering through the nade spam of Alphovians, I was able to make my way and touch it. Epic. Now I had to weaken Alpha further so I could get into their main base, and it was time to visit Yanov once more. And once it was time to go in, the plant was almost empty. I got to the second helicopter and visited the Alpha male leader all alone tweaking in his concrete base. It must be society's fault. And with that, Jupiter was secured, the 2 helicopters were touched, and the SBU had secured Rostock and the forest by themselves. So proud. Next up was our last stop, Zaton. With 3 helicopters I decided to focus just on securing them and less on fighting, but the mod lived up to its name from the second I arrived. I made my way through the marshes and reached the Iron Forest where the 3rd helicopter rests. I cleared the Alphovians that were there and touched it. The next anomaly was in the gas anomaly, so I passed through some boys in blue, then exited the bloodsucker layer through the shitter pipe and went directly for a hook with the helicopter. And the last helicopter was on the plateau. Plateau. So I fought against the hardest enemy yet, burner anomalies. I eventually made it to the portal and I was able to reach the final chopper. With that, the mission was complete. The faction had taken half the zone by now, and it was time to get to Pripyat and leave the zone. I attempted to go through the underground expecting a fight, but it was occupied by Ecologists for the most part. So I bought my last Alphovian and got out, and with that, it was time to say goodbye. C-consciousness, the reason why everything is happening. When playing a C-con, you simply take control of a programmed elite clone of Monolith Soldier, with only purpose to protect C-con, seemingly Monolith on steroids. There is no goal I can achieve, so you simply put our factions against each other and see which one is the strongest, and well, to make this part stand out, I'll do it live. So, alright, it's something very unusual for me to actually talk live during a video, so even if this is shit, I'm still going to include it. The entire idea of this is to just study which faction is the strongest pretty much, and like, see how they're going to behave with each other. Only peak gaming hours. Okay, so here are my bets. I bet that the mercenaries are going to eat the ecologists, and then over here, and then this entire part, like they're just going to spread around this whole circle over here. Maybe they'll take a bite out of freedom, but yeah, I expect mercenaries to be one of the top factions. Like the Monolith, they're not going to do anything. Maybe the Inquisition will eat them. Like this part over here is all going to be mercenary, because I'm going to be fighting the Monolith. The Khans, they kinda suck. They're going to get eaten by the Inquisition. ISG are most likely going to be the Ecologists. They're finally going to eat some shit. This over here, it's probably going to be just Bandits. Like, I feel like it. Like the Slugs, they're fucking useless. Fucking hate those guys. I feel like Intercept will win, because they take like 50 shots before they die for some reason. So the reason why I kept the Battle Royale mode for last was because I really wanted to see how the factions actually behave with each other. And like with C-con, it doesn't fucking matter, because they are not really present at all. They're not really present at all. What the fuck is this? Oh shit. The first firefight, guys. This is truly gaming. Yeah, this is the real skill, guys. Point and click adventure stalker. You know, I could use this time to reflect on the fact that I've spent 2 months of my life just making this video. I really didn't expect it to take this long, actually. Expected at least one, but this is a fucking insanity. I don't know why I even do this. I guess there's something in me that wants to like to perfect this mod. Like I'm a huge perfectionist. Like this is both a good trait and fucking terrible thing. Like, what do I even say? Like, I didn't think this through when I was going to be making a live commentary, because, like, what is there to comment? You literally run around and you shoot shit. There is no story. It's like, this is just an excuse to watch the factions fight it off. Let's see how it's going. Yes, this is very entertaining. This is a gaming right here. Like, it's going to take a while, so, like, I really can't wait to be done with this video. Like, today is the 14th of September. Like, this is before I even started editing this shit, so you use it as your marker of how much time it took me. Oh, holy shit, the entire zoo. Wait, they don't give a shit, actually, yeah? Like, I'm C-con, I'm literally the fucking zoo. We have the racially appropriate chimera. We have the average Albanian over here. There is a Vražeskaya Edinica in your ass. What the fuck is going on? What? Man, that guy survived like 4 headshots. This guy is a true Bulgarian, nothing in his head. Yeah, it's really a lot of work. I did this to myself. Well, at least it's fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this shit. Like, if you watched this video from the start to here, you most likely enjoyed it, so... Yeah, this is fucking terrible. Why are you watching this? Like, I can't imagine how difficult it is to actually be a commentary YouTuber, like playing live, because it actually demands having a personality. Like, you can hide that very well behind the script. And, you know, I'm not a very loud person. I'm actually quite quiet. So it's very difficult for me to talk live. This is true gaming. Oh shit. Eat shit. Oh man, you don't know how fucked you are. Oh, what? Man, honestly, I'm so tired of this mod. Like, you're going to enjoy it if you play it like for a bit, maybe a week with this. But if you're going to be playing it for 2 months, you're going to like start getting brain rot. Like, I am not the type of person to watch live streams, but I started watching streams just to fill up the emptiness that I was hearing. And people blame freedom for this. So we're at the hospital, time to meet my GP. Ah, fuck. Oh shit, no! Oh no! Fuck! No! Shit, no! Please. Man, I know it's content for you to rape me like this, but please... I mean, like, to grape me like... Listen, man, I played Reborn. I am immune to everything now. This is real gaming. Gaming. Man, I love the 9A. Such underrated gun. Like, it's much worse than the AS VAL and the VSS for like every occasion, but it's just so satisfying. I fucking hate this gun. Oh, you're so fucked now. Oh, I told you, bro, so fucked. Shut up. Yeah, you know what, guys? Fuck the hospital. I'm Balkan after all. I don't go to the hospital. I never see a doctor. I just drink Carmolis and vitamins and pray it works. Who do you think you're up against, bro? When I played CSGO, I only bought 5-7 because we kept losing every round. Man, I don't not wish to go against this ever. This is fucking terrifying. Oh, you can control the mutants, okay. The mutant squad is coming, target. Alright, let's go. Let's get to work. Like, I am an old Chernobyl worker. I need to get back to work. I have not worked for like 30 years. I am also a workaholic and an alcoholic. Shit. Bomb. Shit. Ah! No, mother. Yeah, remember when I said the AI is pretty good? I may have. Okay, never mind that. He just couldn't care less. Иди ко мне. Excuse me. My peace stream is stronger than yours. Oh! How is Seacon literally affected by the psi radiation? They are sending it. And the big iron on his hip. This is literally just loner playthrough, it's not even Seacon. Like, what's special about Seacon? They get Gauss Rifle for free. They get Auto Gauss Rifle. But like, you can't even buy it from the traders. There is nothing, no content. Почай, sleep yet. Man, this part is always terrible. Don't think about it. You thought about it. Oh my god. I've actually never gone here, like in Global War. Let's see what happens. They spawn behind, yep. Oh, of course, yes. Yeah, you feeling alright there, bro? Ah! Oh, that was so fucking good. There is a guy behind me, yes? Oh shit, man. Okay. Like, I feel like the more the game runs, the more it just starts fucking up, like ragdolls and shit. It's like it's just calculating over itself. Yeah, I don't really feel like fighting more. Like, doing the fucking ending part, that's more than enough. Let's see what's going on. So, I left the game to run for a while, and I think the factions have reached a bit of a stalemate. As you can see, Seacon owns most of the Chernobyl, but they really have been fighting for this for like 5 real life hours. Like, I'm not really allowing this to continue. They can take the hospital, and this part over here maybe is contested, but the Phantoms are somewhat winning, but it's been like this for 5 hours pretty much. Like, they can't reach the base, but they can't exactly lose. Wind is almost completely gone, so they're probably very weak, but the mercenaries, the fucking mercenaries are the strongest faction. They're not even trying, bro. Like, they're ending the Fallen Angels, they have this, they're literally fucking dutying. That's kinda gay. Freedom, they're kind of spreading to here, but it's again contested by mercenaries, and like they're trying to push to Rostov, but it seems that the mercenaries are really holding their ground. Over here, Freedom and Apocalypse, oh my fucking god. Yeah, if Apocalypse, like if this from Apocalypse just captures this, it's over for Freedom. Over here, the Vikings and the Cans, they're still fighting. It's like taking forever. And this thing, the Cans, for like 5 hours, it's been like this pretty much. Like, the Cans lost 2 points. It's been just a huge stalemate. Even here, like Alpha, it still didn't capture the scientists. Like, for some reason, they just cannot really take it. Maybe it's because the boss is there, I'm not too sure. This has been the same for a long while. The Loners are slowly losing this part, but the Mercenaries and the Zombies, they have not moved that much. Like, the Mercs have 2 points and this bridge over here. Like, they're pushing through the bridge and they might beat the Loners. And the most surprising thing is that the Peacekeepers, they're finally reaching the point where SBO is defeated. Like, yeah, this is Degtyarev. Yeah, Degtyarev is here. I don't fucking care how you say his name. And he's probably just holding them back. But yeah, the majority of Cordon is actually, yeah, it seems balanced. Like, over here it's a nothing sandwich. The most surprising being that the military actually beat Intercept. Like, they have 1 point. They're the weakest faction right now, I think. No, as they with 9. Intercept with 11. Yeah, basically they're just down. They're down. It's finished. The military actually won. I did not expect this. Scene has the garbage, or at least the majority. The Hunters have their own base, and here is the biggest like battle royale, because you have the Hunters and the Vikings and the Bandits and the Black Slugs and the Dark Stalkers, and none of them can really push. Like, the Dark Stalkers have here, the Bandits have their base, the Black Slugs, they're losing slowly because they're shit, but yeah, it's a huge stalemate. that's kinda it. Like, I let it run for an entire day almost, and that's what happened. And I'm too lazy to let it run for longer, so... Very entertaining run, and I think I'm finished here. That was enough. Yeah, bye. Well, that's all the factions. Here is a tier list. Global War was probably my favorite depiction of Warfare so far, and I really enjoyed my time with the mod. Even if it wasn't the hardest, it had so much more variety than any other, with the maps and the factions really bringing it a long way. Of course, there is many things that I think can be improved. For example, Last Day and V.G.R have nowhere to really spread. So I believe that adding the vehicle graveyard over here and moving the Last Day leader here as well would make the zone a more interesting place and let the factions have more freedom. Same goes for Ace Beyond Peacekeepers. They are only ways towards the cordon and usually nobody can stop them. So how about adding a map on the east side, connecting it from this tunnel in the perimeter and this tunnel in Darkscape. This way the military factions could spread there and leave the cordon to be contested for longer by the Stalker factions, and it will also make Darkscape a viable route to Dark Valley. But at the end of the day, the only thing that the devs need to keep improving is the stability, as crashes and FPS drops happen quite often, and I know that 30 factions absolutely kills the game engine, but everything else is fine. Well, there it is, Global War. A great mod with infinite potential. With the next version in close testing, perhaps everything I mentioned could be resolved. This has been my longest video so far, and probably the one that took the most effort and suffering to make. I would like to thank everyone who's still here for watching and for your impeccable patience. If you wish to support the channel, I have set up a Patreon. Special thanks to Marcin and to my girlfriend. Expect a bonus video of all the random moments that happened through my playthroughs to be uploaded there. Next up, I'll be reviewing Stalker Preboy, a story mode that takes place 1 year after Mark 1's story, and it sounds very intriguing. Thanks everyone again for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. If any of you have any suggestions for mods, write them down in the comments and I'll add them to the long list in the description. Take care and good hunting, Stalkers.
Мужик, сначала оружие спрячь.